Hey, Farzi, if you're ready for this, man, that press conference today, I call it, let's bring Marc Farzetta up here. I call it a fireside chat.
Wait, Farside?
It's a fireside chat, you know.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right, yeah, sure.
Like a little fireside chat. You have a little cocoa and, you know, you're roasting marshmallows.
Oh, not FDR fireside chat.
Yeah. You know, just sitting around. But when I heard the fabulous words, I have great faith in the Kobe Dean. That's what I went. Wait a minute. We may get more out of this thing. I'm notorious for polluting a question and making Your Honor a leading question. Farzi, your takeaway from the fireside chat today at the NovaCare Center.
Wow. You know, just first off, as a big history fan, phenomenal pull by you, my friend. Second, I did not expect to go down FDR road today. But anyway, it's horrifying. There's a horrifying I just watched it all. My number one takeaway is that Nick Sirianni has less power than he has ever had. And that is a horrifying thought to think about the head coach of your football team. Nick Sirianni that took over, or that became the head coach of the football team. He was an offensive-minded head coach, young head coach, obviously, right? He was going to call plays. He was going to be your head coach and all that stuff. And now he doesn't call plays. He hasn't called plays now for two offensive coordinators. It'll be three offensive coordinators where he doesn't call plays, they call plays. And now it seems like he really doesn't have anything to do. They literally asked him today, and I think it was Tim McManus. This was a real question at a real press conference. This was not a Saturday Night Live bit that popped up at the NovaCare Combo. Real question. If your offensive coordinator is going to handle your offense and your defensive coordinator is going to handle your defense, what is your role? Sills, a head coach in the NFL got asked the question, what is it you say you do here?
Yeah, what's your job?
And he repeated his job title. He said, my job is to be the head football coach. And, you know, maybe I'll sit in on a defensive meeting. Maybe I'll sit in on an offensive meeting. Maybe I'll sit in. And he goes all over the place. And I'm like, dude, just all you have to say, this isn't difficult. All you have to say is, well, my role doesn't change. I'm still the head coach of this football team. I still do the game planning. I still implement the system we're going to do. He didn't say any of that. He went down the avenue of the core values of holding people accountable and all that stuff and keeping the chemistry in the room up. Oh, my God. If you're the person that yells and screams every Sunday about Nick Sirianni just being a cheerleader, he just gave you a hell of a lot more fodder for that argument. This press conference makes me feel absolutely drained of confidence that this football team is going to figure it out with him as a head coach. He is going to be a liability more than he is going to be anybody that helps this team win football games in the future. And the news leaking out about Vic Fangio most likely now signing with the Eagles to be the defensive coordinator only leads me down that path even further.
How about this? When he says, think about what the things that happened this year. When he says that, I really don't have any control over the defense, the offense, or special teams. I have control, and I'm paraphrasing. Mm-hmm. Got to watch out with paraphrasing because we have English majors that watch the program now. So I'm going to be careful now because paraphrasing seems to be a big deal here now. So I want all of a sudden now it's like I'm in charge of the culture. Well, dude, the culture went to shit at the end. Did you make that hire fire with the sigh? At the beginning of the week, you were not covering. You were talking about when I think it was Silsky who asked the question. He goes like this, are you making any changes as a coordinator? Absolutely not. We have every belief with everybody we have. Then 3 days later, you're bull-faced lying like you did about the Seattle situation. I'm like, it's exhausting, Marc. Mm-hmm. This whole year has been – has this been more exhausting than what you've seen after 17? Has this been more of a shit show?
After 17, oh, you mean like the end of the Chip Kelly era?
No, the end of the Doug Peterson era.
Yes, because with Doug had the flex of I have a Super Bowl championship on my resume. I can go wherever the hell I want. You go to hell. That to me was more intriguing than Nick Sirianni being neutered by the franchise. So to say that this is more messed up, I think is absolutely 100% accurate. I with this team as it is together right now, and you don't know who your offensive coordinator is going to be, You kind of know right now who the Eagles are going after. I mean, Vic Fangio's not letting himself. The Dolphins aren't letting him out of a deal unless he knows he's going to end up somewhere else, and that's exactly what's happening right now.
He's the highest paid DC in the league right now.
Yeah, and how about this? The biggest attraction that he has to your organization is not your organization. It's the geographical location of your organization to his family. That's not a bragging right. Oh, really? We got Vic Fangio here. You know what I mean? No, you're just close to his family.
I'm from Upper Marlboro.
Good God, man.
The job is not a reason to take the job, Mark.
Oh, my goodness gracious. So to answer your question, I feel horrible about where this franchise is right now, and I feel a lot more horrible about it than when Doug Peterson moved on. Although I will say this, I did feel bad when Doug moved on because I knew it was a power struggle again. And ever since it wasn't much of a power struggle with Jeffrey Lurie just said, okay, I'm going to trust the head coach. He's the football guy. And in a way, I give Lurie credit for that. Like, let me trust the football coach I hired. That couldn't have gone worse with Chip Kelly. And now Chip Kelly has ruined it for the foreseeable future for any head coach that comes in to be the head coach of this football team under Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie.
And listen, I love the passion you guys have. I'm talking your fan base, the Eagle fans. But I'm a dude that I don't put my passion into anything. I don't give a shit about Jalen Hurts. I care he gets better. I don't give a shit about Nick. I care they get better and the Eagles get better. That's all I care about. I don't put emotion into it. But to sit here and say that anyone thinks with new coordinators that are going to be brought in that you're fixing Jalen Hurts and that you're fixing the ills of this, when they're admitting it today at their press conference, that get this, they passed and deflected today, Mark. They deflected, okay, coordinators weren't right. We'll fix it. Okay, Hurts had issues. Okay, we'll fix it. Not to take accountability for you making those calls and as long as Nick Sirianni's in that building, nothing will be fixed.
Yeah. That's well said. I don't know how to respond to that. I mean, I think that's the way this passionate fan base that you just talked about.
How long did it take you to get there, though, with him?
As long as he was, it took me that Giants game at the end of the season, in all honesty, because the report was before that game, Nick Sirianni had a rah-rah speech and told everyone how important the game was and how they got to get right before they get into the playoffs, and they absolutely laid an egg. And they even like the Commanders and Cowboys game was close, in the first half, and the Eagles still played like that. They came out playing like that, and then they came out and played in the playoffs the way they played. 9 points. That is utterly embarrassing for an offensive-minded head coach, supposedly trying to instill confidence in his offense, and they could do none of it. I mean, that's really when it started. And then watching this press conference today, 35 minutes this press conference was. Watching it today, it's just like rudderless ship comes to mind. Nick Sirianni is still here simply because he knows how to stay in his lane. The Eagles know, Howie Roseman knows, Jeffrey Lurie knows. With Nick Sirianni, no coordinator is going to be overruling them. The only one with a chance at overruling them is the head coach, but Nick's not going to do that. He knows his lane. He likes being a head football coach in the NFL. So he is going to mind his P's and Q's with this offense while other people come in here to really run the show. Like you're a supervisor, you're a hall monitor. You're a bus safety at this point. Like that's awful. You don't want to look at your head coach, and I've talked about this with you before. You don't want to look at your head coach as if he is far down the list of employee numbers for the franchise. You want to look at him as if he is a boss.
Yeah.
And I can't look at Nick Sirianni like that. He was literally asked the question, "What do you do?" And he's like, "Well, core values." I'm like, "That's not an answer." Oh,
core
damn it.
Values? That's a lawyer's answer.
That is a lawyer's answer. Yeah. Yeah. It's wild to me because the other thing that really jumped in my mind today when I was watching it was when Matt Patricia took over the Eagles office. And by the way, to your point earlier, Howie Roseman said that Nick came to him to make the change from Desai.
Oh,
and
my God.
My thought was, I don't believe you. All right. But anyway, Matt Patricia, when he took over the Eagles defense, he said, this isn't my defense. This isn't Sean Desai's defense. This is the Philadelphia Eagles defense. All right. That's supposed to hint at the idea of things being extremely collaborative. We found out later that really wasn't the case. I found it very interesting that when Nick Sirianni was asked about what the offense is going to look like, he said, well, the new coordinator is going to bring in fresh ideas. The offense got stale last year, and this isn't going to be my offense. This isn't going to be the new coordinator's offense. This is going to be the Eagles' offense. And I'm like, then even more so, what the hell do you do here? I thought part of the reason that you were here is to run the offense. If it's not calling plays, it was supposed to be game planning. If you go back to 2 years ago, before the season, Nick Sirianni came out and addressed the media and said, yeah, we did this a lot last year, but I just want to, Shane Steichen's going to call the plays. I'm going to do the game plan throughout the week, install the game plan, what we want to attack, what we want to do. We're going to be involved in the first 15, and then, Shane Steichen's going to be calling the plays. You just if you answer the question like that today, if Nick Sirianni does that, I'm like, okay, so maybe he's still going to have heavy influence, which doesn't make me feel great either. But at least he has a job. At least he has a role in how this offense is going to function. This just seems like, again, he's a hall monitor, bus safety. It's just going to be overseeing the whole thing and making sure that those coordinators stay one step away from the general manager and the owner of this football team.
Do you know what and how bad the optics are for that fireside chat? And I'm gonna make a point to you here. Why in the world does a head coach have to have general manager babysitting him in case he says something fucked up that they have to counter? And so Howie can take the interview over, because Sirianni is, in my opinion, he's clumsy behind the mic. Mm-hmm. I think he's clumsy, and I think he says stupid shit, and I think he over-explains too much. As you're a head coach, you're one thing, Mark, you're a problem solver. That's all you're hired for. When you're really not a guy who's a play caller, you're a problem solver. So for having the general manager babysit you so you don't say anything wrong, you know what that message says to a locker room? Well, he's not in charge.
Yeah.
Without even saying anything, Mark.
Mm-hmm. I said, when we were doing the post-game show, Seth Jordan and I went back and forth on this a little bit. And it's a horrible message, because if you're a player, you want to, again, look at your coach as if he's in charge, as if he is the boss. When upper management, and I still believe upper management made the call with Sean Desai, it sent a horrendous message first to your defense that, hey, we're 10-3, we were 10-1, we're 10-3 in spite of your dumbasses on the defensive side of the ball. That's the kind of message it sends. We're here in spite of how you guys have played. We've had to carry your ass. That's what it sends. That's the message it sends. It also sends the message that the head coach isn't running the show. If the locker room, which Hassan Reddick said, the higher ups made the decision, if the locker room is looking at it as, oh, wow, okay, so who's really running the show? The guy in the office? The other guy in the office? Those guys running the show? Not the guys that are here coaching this team with the players every day. Those are the guys really running the ship. They weren't, from what it sounds like, they weren't even consulted about making the change. How is Jeffrey Lurie? How is Howie Roseman? How are they going to know the impact it's going to have unless you talk to your team leaders, your captains? I mean, one thing I give Doug Peterson a ton of credit for, he had a phenomenal relationship with his leadership committee. I mean, people forget Doug Peterson came out and openly questioned his players' heart after a game against Cincinnati, which a game Carson Wentz, I think, threw the football 60 times in, and he questioned the team's heart. He then has the heart-to-heart with his team leaders, and then they're able to rebound, and next year they win a Super Bowl. The following year they win a Super Bowl. Where is it? If it's not going to be between Nick Sirianni and his players, if that means it's not going to happen, then it has to happen between Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie and some of the team captains, some of the team leaders. Apparently that never happened, because if there was one thing this locker room was honest about at the end of the season, was how messed up it was to go from Sean Desai to Matt Patricia with 4 games left in the season, and you're 10-3. They underestimated and undervalued the idea of that major change going into the last 4 games of the season.
I 100% agree that upset the locker room dynamic there with that. I look at that, and I think that was the thing that upset the culture that he said that's his responsibility over. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the culture of the locker room. Well, Nick, you failed. You failed at that, and you failed at the inexperienced hirings. How are you in the building? It just doesn't make sense to me. Mark, everything that he talked about that was his job description, you could have hung an F on his report card with.
Yeah, in a pass-fail world, 1,000%. And
Right,
something
you're
that
not graded on a bell curve in the NFL when you're a head coach.
Mm-hmm. You said something really interesting, and I want to make sure people know this. When Nick was asked the question, what is it you do here? Which is more or less the question. What's your role? A head coach in the NFL was asked, what's your role? When he's asked that question, he gave that answer where he, some semblance of an answer would have been nice. You know what I mean? Howie Roseman jumped in after that and goes, hey guys, let me take a question here. And to your point, I took it the same way you did. That's Howie.
That's where I got it.
Swooping in, going, hold on, don't look over there, look over here, everybody. What questions do you have for me? I'm here too. And that never happens. Usually when it's a joint press conference between Howie and Nick is there. He has a nice hoodie on, something like that, something new from the pro shop. And then Howie's getting all the questions. A lot of the questions to start this thing off were directed at Nick Sirianni. Howie opened it up, and then Nick took it over. A lot of questions were thrown his way. And then Howie interjected because I think Howie was looking for Nick to say something similar that he said a year ago when Shane Steichen was officially taking over play calling, which is, I still do the game plan, I still do this. Instead, Nick's talking about sitting in defensive meetings. Nobody wants. You think Vic Fangio is rolling out a red carpet now for Nick Sirianni to be sitting in his meetings? I don't think so.
Yeah, you think Leslie Frazier's going to be going, Nick, what do you think? I mean, come on, man. I mean, hey, you know what? I had a conversation last night with Chris Long, and Chris Long brought something up to me. He goes like this. Let me tell you the problem what happened with Sirianni. Most of these really great coaches in the league right now are play calling head coaches. And what they are is they're insulating their organizations from the pilfering of coordinators that come in like an Andy Reid or like, look at Zach Taylor. They just took the OC, named them. Well, Zach Taylor really calls the plays. Kyle Shanahan calls the plays. McVay calls the plays. Mm-hmm. When they took that, and this was Chris's take, when they took that play calling duties away from him, or however you want to, because we still don't know, they fight the who's in charge kind of conversation in that building. But, I mean, when they took that away, do you think that crippled his ability to be the head coach there when it came to players trusting what they're going to do, game planning? That, if he doesn't have a job in play calling, which is supposed to be a forte of his and how he got the job, doesn't that really dent? And it's just a matter of time before he's fired because he doesn't really have a gig, Mark.
Yeah.
Mark, if he's not involved in play calling and he was hired under that premise and he was a play caller, doesn't that hurt how you got the job in the first? It's like false advertisement.
Yeah. Think about the value.
That's Chris's take and how this is not going to end well.
First off, Chris Long is one of my favorite people I've ever covered in sports in general. The guy's awesome. Second, this team, they want to have confidence that not only they have someone right now that is going to put them in the right position to make a play, but make that play consistently. Not only do they have that right now, but they have that for the foreseeable future. And when your head coach ain't that guy, that only means your offensive coordinator, if he does a good job as a play caller, your defensive coordinator does a good job as a play caller, they're going to move elsewhere. They're going to get plucked, to use your word, and go to another organization, and they're going to help that organization win football games. And then what are you left doing? You're left finding yet another offensive coordinator, yet another offensive play caller for your quarterback that you just guaranteed $110 million to with a ceiling of $250. So that's not exactly the greatest idea in the world. I'll go ahead and classify that as a horrible corporate structure to break it down for the business people in the audience. But yet that's what the Eagles are relying on. Now, why are they relying on it? Because Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie want to maintain their status and their station when it comes to the importance, not just of the organization, but game day responsibilities. So whoever comes in as a head coach, play caller, whoever's coming in has to understand that there's going to be heavy influence from the people in the offices above them. And I don't think everybody is comfortable with that. But Nick Sirianni is for whatever reason.
I want you to be very careful when you answer this question because our friend Barrett Brooks took a beating yesterday.
That bastard Barrett Brooks, that hooligan.
He took a beating. I gave him a chance too. Some go like this, Sills. I mean, I listen. No, I was kind of shocked, but there was a story out there that I read with Joe, and how about this? The body language of Hurts, I hated, in the Tampa game, the New York game, and to some extent, even the Arizona game. There was just not very good leadership, body language, or bedside manner, whatever you want. And by the way, he's a young player. He's developing leadership still, in my opinion, how to handle himself. So, look, I don't want to go too psycho without getting your take on it, but do you think there's something to, and again, this is not a Wentz situation, but do you think there's some, not character issues, leadership issues with Jalen Hurts?
Yes. Is that the question? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. And I'm gonna break a rule here of journalism. I'm gonna tell you my source. My source for Jalen Hurts needing to improve upon leadership, his leadership, is Jalen Hurts. There's my source. He said it at his locker, and everyone wants to make a big deal out. He's fine. He's great. That's just media slander. Jalen Hurts literally told you in his locker he needs to improve upon his leadership abilities. And guess what? He's a young guy. Some people it doesn't come naturally to, and that's somebody that I think will learn it. Look, if I could watch Jalen Hurts improve on his football skills from his first year as a starter to his second and be an MVP caliber quarterback that goes to a Super Bowl, then I think he can improve upon other skills as well. And that's one skill is leadership. The one telling thing that I did find very interesting, and this is from Joe Santoliquito's article. I didn't even think about it, but it has nothing to do with sideline body, what do you call it, body language or anything like that, or how he was carrying himself. And I try not to read too much into it because I don't like to play detective in that way, but I could understand why people would. I mean, I was able to watch this Sunday's past games with a buddy of mine. I never get to do that. We never get to do that. And he was talking about like Baker Mayfield on the sidelines, talking to players. Like, you don't really see that much from Jalen Hurts unless it's a heated thing, which is unfortunate, but that's mostly when we see it.
He's not a verbal quarterback like
right. But the thing that was really interesting that Joe Santoliquito pointed out, and I didn't even think about it, was when in the Giants game, I forget who it was. I think it was one linebacker jumped over when they were about to run a tush push, and they hit Jalen Hurts, and the play was called dead because it was a encroachment, and nobody jumped to Jalen Hurts' aid.
That's funny you bring that up because you didn't watch the interview yesterday, but Barrett brought that up.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And Barrett goes, usually Melodic gets his back.
Yeah. I mean, the classic thing, I mean, I remember the name Chris Baker from the Washington Redskins at the time. I remember that name because he cracked Nick Foles following the 27-2 season from Nick Foles. And then out of nowhere, you see Jason Peters come down and just truck Chris Baker. Nobody, you usually defend the quarterback. Nobody did that for Jalen Hurts, and I thought that was a very odd thing. Now, does that mean – now, look, I in no way, shape, or form. I read the Wentz story from Joe 5 years ago and went, we're doomed. This is terrible. And then I read this story from Jalen Hurts, and I said, all right, this sucks, but I think it's fixable.
I took it as constructive criticism. I didn't take it as something that was a hit piece.
Yeah.
See, some people, nowadays, Mark, if you're constructively – being critical of something, that means you're an automatic hater today for whatever reason. And I think lamestream media has somehow pigeonholed many of us that say something about, like, again, here's a team that's won 25 football games. I mean, it could be worse. You could be the Cardinals. So, I mean, it's 25 wins. But I think the most disappointing thing this year about this Eagle team was that it was self-imploded. And it was like self-inflicted wounds that they did on each other inside the locker room, in the front office, and in the coaching staff. Do you agree, Mark? They won 11 games in spite of poor management decisions and poor coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we went through it. I think the last time you and I spoke, this team was dangerously close to a 6-11 team, a 7-10 team. I mean, I broke it down for you. You talk about like weird things, like Reed Blankenship's forearm being under Terry McLaurin's foot, where McLaurin was out of bounds when Washington was marching down the field to go up in that game, late in that game. You talk about a wide receiver breaking the wrong way in Buffalo. They would have had a walk-off touchdown in overtime. Not to mention that 59-yard field goal from Jake Elliott. Like, there's so many different things that aren't like just, that happens in football. It was like strange things that happened that helped the Eagles get to that 10-1 mark before they obviously dropped to 10-3, and then obviously only winning 11 games over on the season, having the worst breakdown since the New York Jets in 1986 at the end of a season. So yes, they were put in very fortunate and favorable situations to come out with those 11 wins, and could have easily been the 6-11 or 7-10 team this season. That seems like, with the way they played the last 6-7 games of the season, that seems a lot more fitting to the type of team that they were, unfortunately. And yes, you look at the front office, they absolutely put them in this position. They swung. Look, they bring in a guy who's only been a defensive coordinator once, and that's Sean Desai. They bring in Brian Johnson. Unbelievable. This in Eagles history, I've seen some pretty arrogant. We've all seen some pretty arrogant philosophy from the Philadelphia Eagles, going back to Andy Reid not needing a number one wide receiver and all that stuff. But this year really ranks up there when you talk about arrogance. They thought they had this quarterback, this MVP caliber quarterback. They thought they had a great defensive line, and they did for a lot of the season before it really tailed off at the end of the season, like everything else did. And they thought we could go out there and win. And look, we'll make these inexperienced coaching changes at offensive and defensive coordinator, and we'll be fine. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. All is fine. All is well. All is great. And boy, did that blow up in their face as the season ended.
Mark, couple last questions for you. Don't you think, Mark, that the guy that they have to hire for Hurts and for the offense, and I don't know what that name looks like. Is it Frank? Is it experience? Don't you think it has to be someone like this? He's got to be an innovator, and he's got to do something that Shane Steichen did. Shane Steichen, I think, coached Jalen Hurts' inefficiencies, the reading of defenses, the blitz issues. And that's why the RPO was more involved with him. Look at how Anthony Richardson was playing early before he got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got to learn to protect himself a little more. And I think Shane will help him. But I thought Richardson and CJ Stroud were going to be the two quarterbacks that are going to fight out which guys were going to be the better rookie quarterbacks. And I was kind of shocked because Richardson wasn't that hot as a completion guy at Florida at around 51%. And I'm like, wow, this guy looks pretty freaking good. Steichen, I was taken by how well of a coach he is and a play caller. I underestimated him in Philly because he is a really good coach on coaching around a player's problem. You got to find a guy like that, Mark. I don't know if you find him as a traditional offensive guy. Is it a guy like Cliff Kingsbury who knew how to coach Kyler Murray and Patrick Mahomes? Now, the big comeback with that is, well, what do you win with those guys?
Right.
He was under 500 with Mahomes at Texas Tech, and look what he did with you're putting study hall, like per diems and amendments in a guy's contract. So, I mean, what kind of guy do you think they have to bring in for him?
Innovator, absolutely. They have to bring in somebody, and I think about John DeFilippo a lot. When I think about Carson Wentz and how things really started to hit the fan when John DeFilippo wasn't there anymore, because he was the guy to say, I don't give a damn if you were the second overall pick. Like, you got it. This is time to be a pro. And that was the type of guy he was as a motivator and a coach, as a quarterback's coach for Carson Wentz. They need that type of guy, I think, with Jalen Hurts. If Jalen Hurts wants to be coached hard, I don't think the message can just come from Nick Sirianni anymore if Nick Sirianni is the guy that's not calling the plays. That message has to come from the guy calling the plays. And I don't think Brian Johnson had that type of authority as a guy that's known Jalen Hurts, again, since he was 4 years old. And we've all made a lot of that story. But they need to bring somebody who absolutely is an innovator and will help Jalen Hurts have confidence in the play that's called. Now, I am all for a quarterback getting to the line, seeing something and going, okay, no, this isn't it. They're doing something different, and changing the play. You're the guy on the field making the play. You should have that right to do it. But how about giving him something in that moment where he knows he can work with it? Whether that's a hot route that can be audible to, whether or not that's a change of the play that is going to allow him to have a short route there to hit a drag route, whether that's going to be a throw out of the backfield. Not something where I see the blitz coming. It's like, all right, legs, let's make a play. No, you're going to need help from an offensive coordinator. And that wasn't there this year for whatever reason, whether or not Jalen Hurts had too much freedom, whether or not he wasn't coached well enough. I think it's a combination of it all. But whoever comes in better come in with answers, because one thing I've realized from this past season and the way it ended, Nick Sirianni does not have those answers. And the Eagles are about to hire somebody that hopefully has those answers.
Okay. I'm gonna end it with this, and I may have to add on to this question here, and I heard that without saying our name, that Howie took a shot at Big Sills, but that's okay. You know, I'm used to those kind of things here because we're being constructively criticism. And by the way, I'm not a journalist. Okay.
What?
I'm
what?
not. This just in, right, Mark? Mark knows my history. I am not a journalist, folks. I went to school for journalism, but I am not a journalist. This is an opinion show. Either you know that or you don't. I don't pretend to be a journalist here. Okay. I never have. I'm not. Okay. That being said, Mark, Howie Roseman's accountability, and I'm going to throw this at you here, and I'm going to add into it. Like I said, can this guy afford another fuck up of paying a guy $45 million and more money when it came to Wentz's screw up in development, and now you have another guy here? How do you consistently go to your owner going like this? The most important position, we're getting 5-year windows out of these guys, and we're paying $400 million, and I can't get it right. Doesn't this now put him also on a hot? I mean, he can't be the only one not on a hot seat here. Sirianni.
Teflon. Howie Roseman is Teflon.
How can you justify almost $500 million in money and you didn't get 10 years out of those guys?
If you're Jeffrey Lurie,
because he's a Gator.
I made the comparison of Ed Snyder and Bobby Clark. And that's not praise. That's not comfort. That's criticism. If you're Jeffrey Lurie, you told Howie Roseman to go in the broom closet. You gave all the trust to Chip Kelly. That went ass up. So then you brought Howie Roseman back. And 2 years later, he won you your first and only Super Bowl. And then with a different head coach and a different quarterback, you found yourself back in the Super Bowl. This guy is Teflon. As long as Howie Roseman wants to be here, Howie Roseman will be here. The only thing that might offset that is maybe a few years down the line where Jalen Hurts, yes, has failed, and Nick Sirianni has failed, and these coordinator hires have failed. Maybe then and only then will you see a change in management when it comes to how the Philadelphia Eagles are run under Jeffrey Lurie. But I think the Eagles, with all this being said, I think Jalen Hurts can have a bounce back year. I think that taking more power away from Nick Sirianni, as much as aesthetically it's not pleasing where your head coach isn't in charge, the Eagles are going to try to run an end around essentially when it comes to the head coach and have your coordinators be the head coach of the offense and the head coach of the defense. And Nick Sirianni is there to say, hey, good job, everybody. That might not be a bad thing overall. It's bass backwards as far as I'm concerned when it comes to how you should run a football team.
My grandpa would be proud of you. Yes.
Oh, do you like that phrase?
Oh, I do. That's one of my grandpa's favorite.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think all in all, things are going to end well, basically because I think you still have a very talented quarterback. I think you're going to have an offensive line that's going to come back, and you got great weapons on this offense. The running back position is still a huge question mark, but as far as I'm concerned, it's your only real question mark on the offense. I think, by the way, I do think Jason Kelsey's coming back. I don't think he's retiring. Okay. So I think your offense will look pretty damn good.
I'm sorry, I have two more questions then. Okay, now I have two more.
Fire away.
So who is Jalen Hurts? 2021, 2022, or 2023? Because if you're going to rank them, 22 is 1, 21 is better than 23 because of the turnovers. I mean, okay, this guy was second in the league in turnovers.
Yeah.
You lost 6 or 7 at the end. You were going in a good direction at the end of that 21 season because you got yourself in the postseason after a 2-5 start. So you were trending up in 21. In 23, you were trending down. That's why I think that 21 season is better than the 23 season. So who is he, Mark? I mean, you're saying that he's going to be better than what?
Better than
23 or
this
21?
Year. 23. I think he's going to be far better than. I don't think the turnovers are going to be a thing of the norm. And I think one of the big charges of the new offensive coordinator is going to be making sure that he's not the guy taking off with the ball as many times as he has. I think you're going to be relying on him more as a thrower. And I understand the interceptions were way up this year. The scheme was way down this year. And I do put a lot on the scheme. Look, there is a huge. Don't get me wrong.
You know what it looked like? One-on-one basketball.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just one-on-one plays where, hey, AJ, go make a play.
Yeah.
Because, hey, Mark, when you watch Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan or any of these other guys, even Matt LaFleur, they're scheming to get guys open. That's not really fundamentally a sound approach in Philly. They don't really do that. It's like, go make a play. And Jalen will make the hard throw. And I told you this last week. He was the number one quarterback in the NFL that had the toughest throws in the league. That's going to result in high turnover plays. That's why the turnovers were high. Instead of making the easy throw, like in the Seattle game, to Devontae underneath, go there, punt. There's nothing wrong with punting. The special teams were good. They're so impatient. Brady was not a big play guy. They want Jalen to be a big play guy. That fucker won 7 Super Bowls not being a big play guy. Marc, he won 7 not being a big play guy.
And the only one he lost is when he was a play, or the two he lost, right. He was a big play guy.
Yeah, when he broke the record and Moss had 20 touchdown catches. Yeah. And they didn't win it that year.
No, exactly. So I think with better coaching, I think Jalen Hurts is one thing I do believe from Nick Sirianni today is he said, if I take away anything from Jalen Hurts is that if he has something he's got to work on, he's going to work on, he's going to get better at it. I think we learned that from Jalen Hurts last year. This year, admitted 1,000% regression, but it was a regression all around. I know it's sexy to always just throw the quarterback under the bus and say he sucks now and all that stuff, but look at the entire Eagles offense, the coaching especially, was a huge regression this season. So I look forward to seeing what the new offense coordinator is going to do with the fresh ideas and have the answers and whatever. But I look at Jalen Hurts much more as if he is that quarterback that we saw last year, not this past season, but the previous year. I look at him as a guy that will again compete for an MVP in this league. And if you look back on this season, before they got to that San Francisco game, which ended up being the pin pulled on the grenade, unfortunately, he was still the odds-on favorite. The books had him as the favorite to be the MVP of the league. And then everything hit the fan. And unfortunately, nobody had answers, especially your quarterback, your head coach, your offensive coordinator. That's a lot to go wrong to rely on one player to figure it out. So that's unfortunate. So I see more of what we saw a year ago.
Last question. Looks like Fangio, there's this report, I think Adam Schefter's even saying it too, that he's the front runner to become the new defensive coordinator.
Yes.
Of the Philadelphia Eagles. What's your take on that?
I actually really like Vic Fangio as long as he is the defensive coordinator. And I think one of the things the Eagles have done is...
You mean not a puppet figurehead?
Oh, absolutely. Like Jim Schwartz, for instance. Do you think anybody, had their hand up his derriere? I don't think so.
No.
So I think you're getting at least... I look at Vic Fangio as at least I look at one guy as for right now before you know who the OC is going to be. I look at Vic Fangio as, okay, good. At least I know who's running the defense. Like Vic Fangio isn't coming here.
Former head coach at Denver too.
Former head coach at Denver.
Okay, so he's got a former head coaching and he's got a pedigree. Okay, that they want experience in there.
Yeah, yeah, and again, you look at the role of the head coach now with Nick Sirianni. If things go terrible with him in the upcoming season, he just slides over. Maybe you do hire Eric Bieniemy as your offensive coordinator, and he slides over. Whoever, or Frank Reich, and he slides in, right? But as far as Vic Fangio goes, as long as he's running the defense, I feel good about that. Now, people will go to the Vic Fangio scheme doesn't work anymore. All right. Do you want Pearl Jam or do you want the Pearl Jam cover band? Okay. Because we've had Pearl Jam's cover band for the last 3 years here. And hey, look, you still got to a Super Bowl with one of them. You lost, unfortunately. You had 70 sacks, and the Miami Dolphins this past year were the top 3 team in sacks. Vic Fangio knows the Vic Fangio scheme. Everybody else is the cover band. I'm willing to listen to the original to see if that works out here, especially if it means you're going to have a respected, authoritative figure on that side of the football, because the Eagles really haven't had that since Jim Schwartz. So I'd like to see that at least work out. Now, the other side of the football, still very much to be determined, but it looks like the Eagles are going to have 2 head coaches with a bus safety and Nick Sirianni.
So you don't like Alicia in Chains, you like Alice in Chains. I got it. Okay. Hey, I'm going to tell you there's a chance that Frank Reich gets a head coaching job. You know where that is?
Where?
Philly.
When?
Okay. Nick shits the bed with an 0-5 start.
Okay.
They slide him in as their new head football coach next year after week 5.
Oh, boy.
As the interim.
Oh, boy.
He takes the team to the playoffs. And they take the tag off.
Wow. So Brian Johnson and Jalen Hurts from best friends to now mortal enemies. And then in the following season, Frank Reich and Nick Sirianni, best friends to mortal enemies. Love it. I will dine on that for the offseason, my friend.
Hey, as the eagle turns, okay, this Jeffrey Lurie should be very proud of this melodrama he has going on, man, because this is right up his alley here, man. I mean, the offseason is so dope right now. This is so much great content, Marc.
Oof. Oh yeah, we're in luck.
Lived like this in Philly with this because this is exceptional. Your content is exceptional. You got a guy who scored 70 the other night who won't get out of the first round. You got Doc now back with Milwaukee and Giannis. That's going to be quite a playoff series.
Yeah,
this is really absolutely fantastic shit. And you got a hockey team that's doing great shit with Torts. I like that. This is really wild here. Now, I'm not a guy in shorts and floppers with the union and all that. I really don't give a shit about that stuff. However, the rest of it is awesome.
Yeah.
Does it always go like this?
No, it's never boring. It's never boring. I can tell you that. And you just made me realize something. So hold on a second. You're about to have Sirianni. You're about to have Vic Fangio most likely, and you have John Tortorella. I mean, we're a haven for the Italian American in this city, man. We're doing great.
You know, and this is why I hate Goomba on Goomba attacks. So, you know, I really, it's a problem for me a little bit with Sirianni, me going after him because, you know, there's a loyalty to the flag, you know what I'm saying? And also to the gabagool. You know, I mean, you know, there's a loyalty, Marc, to the gabagool.
No, I know. You got it. I pledge allegiance to the gabagool every morning. What can I say?
I got you, man. Hey, dude, you're awesome. Thank
Back
you
at
so
you, brother.
much, man. Make sure, guys, you check him out. He does spectacular work. Thank you so much for spending time with me, brother.
Always a pleasure, Sil. See you, man.
You got it, man. I appreciate it. Marc Farzetta for joining us here. Don't forget to please check him out and check out all his fabulous work. He does a great job. All right, hit the like button. Keep it here on the National Football Show.
Football and Hooters, the perfect pair.